I defended my friend at her wedding, but somehow I'm the one under fire?
You do this today on the day of my friend's wedding. You come to me with this.
Okay. This requires some major context to make remote sense. Now, I, 26 female, have known one of my best friends, 25 female, since our first year of college when we were 18 and 17, respectively. Let's call her Busy. Busy just got married a few weeks ago, and I'm still getting hate over what happened at her wedding. By the way, this comes from Miss Mia Madness 3, and if you want to submit your own stories, go to r/OKStorytime subreddit. So, for context, Busy is a very socially anxious and just generally anxious person with autism. Her wedding was an ordeal that was stressing her out so much. She was high-strung during all of the planning and put so much into this wedding. She was really nervous about being the center of attention and having her every move scrutinized by a large crowd of guests. She told me that it felt more like a performance rather than her wedding. We all knew this was hard for her to shoulder, so we did what we could to lighten the load. I wasn't the maid of honor, but I was a bridesmaid and happy to help out where I could. Her now husband has always supported her and was glad to take on the harder aspects of wedding planning, but Busy herself had booked the florist and caterer and had made the invitations. One thing that she asked for was security. She discovered the many ways a wedding could go wrong and decided she wanted to err on the side of caution. No one was upset by this. In fact, we were all glad that she had a way to give herself more peace of mind. Now the groom, 26 male, who we'll call Sam, came to me with a special request that during the wedding, excusing the ceremony, he wanted to sort of be in charge of keeping peace and that if anything should go wrong, to try to keep it under wraps so as not to let the news spread to Busy. If there were any issues with the venue or catering or guests, I would handle it. I agreed because I'm great at that sort of thing, and I wanted to help Busy out as much as possible. Plus, I would get to call security on any unruly guests. Now, here's where issues start. All of us bridesmaids were all taking pictures with the bride outside of the church before the ceremony. Guests were arriving, but they were all being dropped off and seated through a side door and weren't in our area. So a car pulls up near us, but we don't think much of it, assuming it's a guest who will find their way to the right door. But out comes two people I know for a fact would never have been invited. One of them was Busy's old college roommate. We'll call her Margaret, 26 female. There's a lot of context here, but I'll try to summarize it by saying she made Busy's life a living heck in our first year of college. She decided that everyone in her vicinity needed to be taken down with her poor mental health, especially Busy. Now, Busy back then did not know when to stop ignoring her own needs in favor of putting others above herself. Margaret got off on a power trip, running Busy into the ground to basically serve her. She was super manipulative, and let's just say she weaponized some past trauma that Busy had confided in her about to gaslight Busy into staying with her and continuing to put herself out. It got so bad that Busy couldn't even eat or sleep and kept neglecting her schoolwork to take care of Margaret. Eventually, myself and another one of our close friends, Susie, 27 female, got Busy away enough during the day to have time for herself. Margaret wasn't happy with that and did whatever she could to draw Busy back in, snapping at her and lashing out when they were alone in their room together. Susie and I were afraid to leave her alone with Margaret in the room that night. Busy never told us while it was happening, but came clean much later that she genuinely felt scared for her safety and thought many times that Margaret would become physically violent with her. Needless to say, we cut Margaret off after our first year of college, and Busy got a new roommate the following year. But we haven't spoken to her since, and something felt so wrong about her suddenly being invited to the wedding. And she turned up with another past friend from our freshman year, a guy friend we'll call Jared, 26 male, who became completely obsessed with Busy, like to the point of stalking and trying to control her, until she cut him off at the end of the year. So yeah, not a great lineup.
So, to be clear, Busy's the one being invited to the wedding,
No,
not...
Busy is the bride.
But so wait, she's inviting the one who was No. saying all that stuff to her?
So Busy's the bride. Margaret, her Busy's hater, and Jared, the stalker, showed up uninvited.
Oh,
to
okay.
Busy's wedding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I was about to be like, girl, why are we inviting?
Girl.
Why are we inviting her?
No one else in the bridal party knew the two personally. Only the maid of honor had even heard the story of Margaret, as it wasn't an experience any of us liked to talk about. So seeing her and Jared just show up shocked me and Susie, and Busy was shocked too. I watched her face go stark pale as the two got out of the car. The problem was, since we weren't sure how or why they were here, it felt wrong to just punt them out with no explanation. I wasn't even sure if I was allowed to send security after that. For all we knew, she could have been invited by someone else, perhaps as a +1. Otherwise, she wouldn't have known about the wedding at all. But they didn't stop to say anything to us, though, and just made their way inside the church. It seemed they knew where to enter from, so they got out in front of us just for our benefit, I guess. Busy pulled me and Susie aside after we finished with the pictures to ask what to do. She was panicked about going through with the wedding, not knowing if they were going to cause trouble. Even just having them there was terrible for her nerves, but it was basically too late to stop the ceremony.
I don't know about that. I think it's never too late to remove somebody from a wedding that they are not welcome or explicitly invited to. And whoever made them their +1, you go, hey, I'm really sorry. But
This is OP. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to send security after them. I thought OP was kind of told to send security after people. Wasn't that?
I don't understand that reasoning. I think that's like, oh, it's too late, but it's not. No, it would just be a conversation. It would be weird, but you do that, you push through it.
But it was basically too late to stop the ceremony. Eventually, though, we got her to calm down and focus on her marrying the love of her life instead of an old roommate and friend who didn't deserve the time of day. No, but okay, I'm sorry. If Busy's freaking out, that's when you go and get the security and take them out.
You remove them.
Yeah.
It's okay. You can do that.
I don't know. I feel like
literally.
I feel like it's not like necessarily an a-hole thing, but it is like that was the job that you were given. One thing to know about Busy is that while she's anxious and timid, she is supremely stubborn and determined. She comes off as meek and submissive since she's quiet and doesn't like conflict, but it's nearly impossible to get that girl to roll over for you without straight up manipulation anyway. She does not budge when she wants something unless someone might get hurt, and she was determined to not let past acquaintances ruin her special day. The wedding ceremony was lovely, I must say. There were no hiccups. They got through their vows just fine, and no one objected. The only way you could tell something was off was because many family members of Busy's were giving the two unwelcome guests nasty side eyes. During her difficult year with Margaret, Busy had confided and relied on her family a lot to get through it. Thus, most of them knew about Margaret and Jared, also a grade A POS for other reasons, and were all sure they were here to cause problems. The real issue starts at the outdoor reception. I informed the other bridesmaids and groomsmen to keep an eye on Margaret and Jared, giving them minimal information. I also informed security about my concerns just in case, so they could be ready for the fiasco I was almost certain would go down. Don't ask me why we didn't immediately punt them out. Honestly, most of us were so frazzled by them just showing up that we weren't sure what to do or what the right protocol was. Busy also didn't want them punted out without reason, lest she look entitled or trigger happy in front of her future in-laws. We figured if they become a problem, we'd have them escorted out. Okay, that's relevant information because Busy said she didn't want to kick them out too.
But like you already have a reason.
You already have a reason.
It's like, I don't want to kick them out without a reason. It's like you literally have a reason.
They're terrible people.
Like this is someone you used to fear for your physical safety around.
Yeah.
That's more than enough reason to not have them at your wedding.
I think that does take away any really fault that could have been placed on OP because Busy said don't kick them out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, yeah. If you're gonna have someone in charge of kicking people out of the wedding, make them confrontational.
Yeah, it's true. A small part of me, and probably the bride too, thought they may have come to patch things up between us. Truthfully, it was something we'd always wanted because we had actually been super close with them both as friends before everything started going down. We really missed our good friends, and the possibility of making amends gave us a small sense of hope. Okay, so the reception started off just fine, with food being served and everyone having a good time. I almost thought we were right about the making amends things. They mostly stuck to themselves quietly for the first half of the reception. They didn't even interrupt the speeches or make one themselves. The issue came right after the cake cutting. It had been a beautiful moment between the bride and the groom, doing the typical gently feeding each other thing, real cute, and the cake started to be served. Busy and Sam decided that how they wanted to serve the cake was to distribute it themselves to their guests in order to individually get a moment with each of them and thank them for attending. So Busy was serving cake for the guests on her side and Sam for his. Margaret and Jared got in Busy's line. As a bridesmaid, I had been one of the first people to get served cake, so I was already sitting down once they were up. I'm gonna be honest, I briefly thought Margaret would do a 180 personality switch and drop the cake onto Busy's wedding dress. Thankfully, that didn't happen. They seemed to share civil words that looked very business level, kept at arm's length. They were near the back of the line and stepped aside to stay beside her while she served the few remaining guests their cake. They started talking to her once she was done, Sam serving the last of his guests. Honestly, even now, I have no idea what they were talking about. Busy hasn't really wanted to talk about it. And I couldn't really involve myself because a minor issue came up with one of the groom's younger cousins disappearing from the party. Since that was my job to take care of those incidents, I did have to step away to find him. Note, he was okay. He's 12 and his mother just freaked out a bit because he didn't tell her he was going to play inside the reception hall with the other kids. Anyways, I was just wrapping that up when Susie came to find me. By the look on her face, I could tell something was happening. By the time I got to the outdoor section of the venue, I could see why she'd look so distressed. Somehow, while I'd been gone, Margaret had started yelling at Busy and Sam. Jared wasn't saying much, but he was glaring daggers at Sam the whole time. Susie told me the yelling had apparently started out of nowhere. It was basically the worst case scenario, and everyone at the reception had come to see. Busy and Sam are a quiet couple who would never have major drama before, so to suddenly see it happen at the wedding out of nowhere was mind-boggling. I managed to catch some words thrown around, which basically boiled down to Margaret calling Busy a fake bee and gaslighter for ditching Margaret back in college. Here's where I've been getting called out by some wedding guests. I could tell that Busy was starting to panic. I don't blame her, since this girl absolutely tormented her back in college to the point where she went to see a therapist about the whole situation. With all eyes on the bride getting screamed at, it wasn't making the situation any easier. Sam was trying to take the brunt of it, but he was clearly so confused and had no idea what was going on, since he had never been told about Margaret having met Busy after we graduated. Basically, I wasn't really thinking about much aside from shutting down the shouting and getting Busy out of the spotlight. I grabbed a random glass off of one of the tables and marched right up to Margaret and threw its contents right in her face.
Whoa, okay. Do we, I don't know. I don't condone that.
You're making it worse now.
Yeah.
This isn't kicking
whoever
her out.
Pointed you, which was Sam,
So
did a bad job.
Clearly,
at
you
pointing.
are confrontational
Yeah.
to a point, but
Turns out it was champagne, not water.
Oh.
Why would you have assumed it was it was water? I'm assuming it was in a champagne glass.
It was sparkling
it's
water.
It's falling apart.
So her dress was basically ruined after that. Not gonna lie, it felt great since she was a real bee to all of us back in college, and I'd never gotten the chance to express to her how she was making us feel. Victory was short-lived as she then tried to swing at me.
Whoa.
Luckily, security got involved and escorted both her and Jared out. And that should have been the first option.
Would have done that before
Could've
it
done
turned
that
into a fight.
Yeah,
hours ago.
This
Yeah.
is like the worst thing you can do because you're making it more of a scene.
You just made a giant scene when you could have just gotten security and said, hey, let's get this lady out.
Well, this goes back to Busy being like, I don't want to kick her out if there's not a reason. It's like, this was already the reason.
Yeah. I already had a
Preventing this
reason.
from happening was the reason.
Ooh.
champagne glass with bubbles.
It was immensely satisfying, and I did successfully divert all attention away from the bride having a meltdown. There was basically no coming back from that, though, and the party did not really recover. Though Busy was fine with that since she wanted to get out of there anyway, I did feel bad for some of the guests who awkwardly said their goodbyes and left pretty suddenly after the whole fiasco. I know I could have handled it better, but I've never seen such a big smile on Busy's face before once she had finally calmed down. We also explained the whole thing to Sam since he was confused about the whole thing. It was a good thing Margaret and Jared had already been escorted out, or he would have gone after them himself. Note, we found out that Margaret must have somehow found out about the wedding via family members' Instagram posts of the wedding and the couple. Margaret had been following a few back when we were all still friends and apparently never unfollowed them. Sam's Instagram was tagged in the pics since he had an account, though Busy isn't on any social media. Margaret had reached out to Sam claiming to be in the middle of getting a new phone number and having lost the wedding invitation.
See, another great reason why you could have just like immediately removed her because she lied to even get in the wedding.
Yeah.
Like, she don't need that.
She put the correct month in the message since it had been all over the family's accounts. She told them she was Busy's college roommate, and since Sam hadn't heard any of the story, he was happy to send her an electronic copy of the invitation. And you know what? Honestly, going back a little bit further, Busy could have mentioned this, Sam. Sam could have double checked him and like, hey, your college roommate reached out.
Yeah, anybody in charge of logistics could have logistically checked that.
He felt bad about it, and while it was a little silly to fall for that, we don't blame him. A lot of the groom's family, as well as some of the bridesmaids and groomsmen, are telling me that I ruined the wedding by starting that fight, and that I ruined the bride and groom's day. I like to argue that I made it better. He's like, I like to argue that it was a little bit more interesting after
I like to argue the opposite of that, please.
I like to argue that I made it better, and Margaret and Jared are the ones who ruined it, though I can admit that perhaps starting a fight wasn't the best way to do it. I honestly acted on instinct to quickly divert attention away from the bride. Her side of the family is more split on it since most of them knew about Margaret, but some of them are still very vocal about what I did wrong. I can accept that, but most of those disagreeing with me are telling me to reach out to Margaret and apologize publicly. Don't do that. Saying she deserves it and I should treat her with respect even if she won't do the same. Even after we'd explained the whole situation to everyone. Apparently all of them are happy to ignore the fact that she was screaming at the bride on her wedding day in front of everyone. But you know what everyone can do? Listen to full episodes of stories just like this. Just go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or iHeartRadio and search up OK Storytime.
And listener will scream at you.
You'll scream.
We'll scream.
There is a little bit left to the story, but honestly, I thought it was going to be like Busy or Sam getting upset and saying like, hey, you did not handle that situation well.
Yeah.
It seems
else.
like the bride and groom, who are the most important people in this situation, are chill. So I think you're fine. Definitely not the best way to handle the situation.
No,
but,
not at all.
Like no one important is mad at you. So
you should have just had security remove them at the very beginning. Should have been like, don't know how you guys ended up here. You're definitely
like,
not invited.
You guys
to Busy's wedding.
You guys shouldn't be here.
Are you like an alternate timeline version of yourself that came from somewhere else?
Interesting.
Where you weren't awful to her in college?
For OP, I think they were thinking definitely in the situation of just like kind of like flight or fright kind of thing, like just like right instinct right then and there. But that one line that OP said is like, I'm actually so happy I did this because like I
honestly don't believe that OP thought it was water. I think OP knew champagne.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking I was going to say that.
Just be for real.
She was like,
there's no way you thought that was water. It turns out it was actually champagne and not water, so her dress was ruined.
I just thought it was a little
I thought sparkling water.
No, she's like, I thought it was water. It turned out it was red wine. It's like, okay. Well, let's finish the story off. I kind of know that I'm the a-hole for instigating Margaret into getting herself punted out, but I think my reasons speak for themselves and I don't think I should be expected to apologize. What she did was basically verbally attack my friend who was more than happy that I stepped in and ruined her wedding. Sam wasn't upset either, just glad that I had stood up for his new wife. What pisses me off the most is that those disagreeing with me seem to have written off everything we told them about Margaret because I made her into a victim by lashing out at her, even though they're the only ones who see her as a victim. It was clear as day to me that she and Jared were the problem. Still, a lot of them are demanding I apologize to them as well as to the bride and groom. I don't know, honestly, if I'm truly in the wrong or if I was justified to do what I did. So am I the a-hole? You were an a-hole to throw that champagne, but
your actions, like the actions.
Yeah,
were
the action were a-hole-ish, but the bride and groom liked it. They don't care. Literally, no one else matters.
Yeah.
Don't apologize to Margaret. She sucks.